Testing, testing. Are we recording? We are recording. Hello and welcome to More to the Story, a podcast all about telling your story and sharing it with the world. I am your host, Janna Maron, and it's been a minute. I think it's been since July of 2021, and I'm looking down because I'm just looking at it on my phone when the last episode of this podcast was released, July of 2021. So we're coming up on 4 years since I have released a podcast episode, and a lot has happened. 2021, we were all still in the midst of COVID and the pandemic, and are we shutting down? Are we sheltering in place? Are we not shutting down? What's happening? Are the kids going back to school? Are they not? What's happening? There was still a lot of uncertainty in the world. And guess what? Here it is, the beginning of 2025, and there's still a lot of uncertainty in the world for different reasons. But the one thing that remains true for me, and I hope it remains true for you, is that our stories matter. And our stories matter more now than ever. And I'm even more committed to the work that I'm doing as a result, and I'll talk more about that as I continue. But welcome. Thank you for being here. I am officially back to rebooting More to the Story as a podcast. In addition to this podcast, I also publish a magazine called Under the Gumtree, which publishes creative nonfiction and visual art, which I have been doing since the fall of 2011. So this past fall, I just celebrated 13 years of publication with that magazine. Coming up this year, we'll be celebrating 14 years. And I'm also a book coach and editor for women writing nonfiction with my company, also called More to the Story. So a big part of the reason behind rebooting this podcast is to reach more folks who want to write and tell their story in the form of a book and who need support and help in doing that. And that is the work that I'm dedicated to doing. So you can find out more about Under the Gumtree at underthegumtree.com, and you can find out more about my company, More to the Story, at moretothestory.co. And I'm sure as I continue the podcast, you'll hear more about both of those in episodes as it's appropriate, especially More to the Story and the work that I do with my clients, because this year alone, 3 or 4 of my clients will be published. I think actually, let me clarify that and say that in the next 18 months, 4 of my clients have books coming out. And 4 of them are already published. 1 of them has signed with an agent. It's been very exciting work for me to come alongside these women and support them in finding not just writing and finishing the book and figuring out a publishing path, but helping them first and foremost figure out what is the story that they want to tell, why the story matters in the first place, why it matters to them, why it matters to the people they're trying to reach with that story, and that why and the vision that they have for their book and for themselves as an author is the thing that I always start with. It's the very first thing that I do with any clients who come to work with me, because guess what? That is the thing that keeps us returning to the work over and over. It's really easy to feel discouraged, to feel unmotivated, to feel like you get into a rut or at a place where you feel like you're hitting all these rejections. Maybe you're querying, maybe you're submitting, and you just keep getting rejection after rejection, and you just start to feel like, why am I even doing this? Well, one of the very first things that I do with my clients is we answer that question, why? Because that's the thing that is going to keep you motivated to return to your work over and over, even when you are starting to feel a little bit discouraged. And I say all of that to say that is my why. That's why I return to the work that I do with these women, is when I get to see them achieve this dream that they've had for themselves for years, sometimes their entire life. I have clients who have been working on their books for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. And then they start to work with me, and guess what? They finally make forward movement that they haven't made on their own in so long. And not only do they make forward movement, they come to a finish line where the draft is finished. And then we work on a plan, like what's next? And guess what? What's next steps is different for each and every person. And that's one of the things that I am going to harp on. And this is the hill that I will die on until I retire, if I ever retire. And that is, there is no one size fits all. There is no one single publishing path for any individual. It's always going to look different for each person. And guess what? It always comes back to their vision and their goals and what they want to accomplish and how that will inform the decisions they make about the path that they pursue for publication. So that's just kind of like some high level stuff about the work that I've been doing in the last 4 years since the last episode of this podcast was released. And I wanted to share a little bit about what has happened for some of the guests that have been on the podcast. If you go to the podcast archive, I have moved the podcast archive over to Substack. So if you go to moretothestorypodcast.substack.com, that is where the archive of the podcast now lives. And if you scroll through, there are 24 past episodes spanning from February 2016 to, as I already mentioned, July 2021. And as I scroll through and I just look at some of these guests that have been on the podcast in those years, Lori Easter, Kate Washington, two women who have since published books since being on the podcast with me. Penny Geisinger also has a book out since she was on the podcast with me. Who else? Yadon Israel is now a senior editor at Simon & Schuster. He recently just came and did a really wonderful chat with my coaching clients. Rebecca Tausig has a book out. Katie Standuffer, on her podcast interview, we were talking about the book that she was still in process of writing, and it is now published. Lightning Flowers is the name of that book. And Nicole Walker, she was a published author when she came to the podcast, but she's since had at least one book come out. So I'm looking back at all these guests just thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, it's been a long time since I've put out a podcast episode, but look at what time does. It just allows for progress. It allows for growth. It allows for transformation. It allows for people's books to be published. You know, as writers and authors, we're often bemoaning how long the process is, or how hard the process is, or how few opportunities there are. Well, I don't use any of that language with my clients because first and foremost, one of the main things that I like to focus on is how your thoughts create your reality, and you can program yourself with the words that you say to yourself, whether you say them internally in your mind or externally out loud, auditorily. You know, you speak them and you say them out loud. And if we want to wallow and complain about how horrible things are for writers and how few opportunities there are, and really focus on the scarcity of the publishing world, then that will continue to be the reality. And so that's one of the things that I really focus on with my clients is we kind of banish that type of talk in our community space and with each other. And we practice talking about manifesting what we want to see in the world. And maybe you're going to hear this and think, okay, that's a bunch of like toxic positivity or whatever you think it is. But there are people who make their livelihood and their careers out of mindset programming, rewiring your mind, using your words to condition yourself for the life, to take action to create the type of life that you want. And what I'm doing is applying some of that type of philosophy to writing and publishing books. And when I look at the archive of podcast episodes and guests that have been on with me talking about their writing journey, talking about their publishing journey, and the years since they've been a guest with me, and the time and what time has allowed to happen in their life and in their career, they have books published. Many of them have books published when they didn't, however many years ago it was that we had that initial conversation. So to me, that's exciting. That's encouraging. That's something that we can look to and learn from and internalize for ourselves that, hey, that could be our reality too. So I wanted to just kind of like give a shout out to the previous guests that have been on the podcast with me in those 4 years or so that I was publishing episodes. I did 3 seasons of 8 episodes. And that archive, as I mentioned, is available on Substack. So go look for more of the story on Substack and subscribe there. If you're not already subscribed, that's going to be the best place to get the regular updates about the podcast. And you can also add the podcast straight from Substack into your favorite podcast player, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Spotify, you can tell sometimes I stumble over all these different platforms that are in play with each other, but Substack will prompt you and walk you through how to add the podcast to your favorite player once you subscribe at Substack. And it's free to subscribe. Not asking for any paid subscriptions, at least not right now. May do that in the future, but haven't made any decisions on that because guess what? All I wanted to do was start putting out episodes. I have been telling myself that I was going to record an episode literally every week since the beginning of December. And here it is. As I'm recording this, it's January 31st. It's the last day of the month of January. It's taken me literally 8 weeks to finally sit down and record this podcast episode. I did have some legit barriers because when I finally got my setup all situated and started to hook up my microphone and was going to sit down and record, the USB cable that connects the mic to the computer died. And so I couldn't record. And so I had to order a new cable, wait for it to get here, test it, make sure that was the problem, the real problem. And then once I figured out, okay, now it's working, I can finally sit down and record. There's just been other reasons that keep me from doing it. You know how when there's something you want to do, even though you know you want to do it, even though you know it's going to be good for you, even though it's something you've said you want to do for a long time, for whatever reason, there is that resistance that comes up it comes up internally. And one of the things I've been working with, and I work with my clients on this too, is once that resistance comes up, it's an indicator that, gee, that's a thing you probably really should be doing, right? And then once you realize that, I don't know about you, but the resistance for me comes in even stronger. And sometimes that resistance even manifests externally, like with the cable that was fried and I couldn't use my mic. I probably could have recorded without the mic and maybe just used like my headphone microphone, but you know, once you have a certain level of quality, I don't know about you, but I'm the type of person who's like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go down in quality. I want to excel. I want to exceed. I want to grow. I want to expand. So I couldn't let myself record without my official podcast mic. So here we are. So in addition to just kind of giving like a high level review and little shout out to some of those past podcast guests to talk about the power of time and how time is on our side. Really, oftentimes we feel like we don't have enough time, especially if we're getting older. We feel like we're running out of time. We feel like maybe we're coming to the end of our life and we feel like, is this going to happen in the time that I have left? But when I look at the past podcast guests and I see, oh, that many, I think I rattled off 5 or 6, maybe even 7 names of folks who have books published now when they didn't, however many years ago it was that they were on the podcast with me. That's a reminder to me that time is on our side because we have to allow for time to work its magic and for the universe to work its magic so that other things can align in the perfect moment right when we are ready and when we're in the spot and showing up for the thing that is supposed to come to us. Maybe that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but you know, I got to keep it high level in a podcast episode like this. I can't get super deep and nitty-gritty without a little extra time. But I do that kind of work when I'm on calls with clients. So the other thing that I wanted to share and get into just briefly is a little bit about what's going on with me personally. Because if you have followed me for any amount of time, you maybe know that, it's the beginning of 2025, so almost 15 years ago, it'll be 15 years in June, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And if you're new here, you're getting the nutshell version of part of my personal story and my personal journey around why true personal storytelling is so powerful and so important to me, because I have found healing, health, and wellness as a result of this work, which is another reason why the words we say and the thoughts that we think are so directly tied to the physical reality and experience that we have in life, because that has been my experience. So I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in June of 2012, and I feel very fortunate that I lived symptom-free for nearly 10 years. So I had an episode at the time of my diagnosis and was able to recover, and then lived symptom-free for nearly 10 years. More than 10 years, actually, because in August 2022, I had a pretty major relapse that caused neuropathy throughout my entire body. Started in my feet, worked up my legs to my torso, mid-body, neck, chin, back of my head, even on the left side of my face, like all the way to my cheek and my ear, down my arms, my hands. And it was so bad that I was having trouble walking. Thankfully, I recovered mostly in my feet and legs pretty quickly after 6 weeks, but it persisted in the upper part of my body, primarily my arms and my hands and my neck, chin, cheek, for almost 2 years. A year and a half, so badly that my hands were debilitated, numb, painful tingling, painful pins and needles. I couldn't use the computer keyboard for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And in 2023, I made the very difficult decision to start some new therapy treatments, including a disease-modifying medication, which I continue to take by IV infusion every 28 days. And while I recovered and adjusted to that new treatment in 2023, I shut down my business. I maintained a small handful of clients who were in a membership community, a coaching membership community with me, but I wasn't doing any promotion. I wasn't doing any marketing. I wasn't doing any selling or new offers. I wasn't getting new clients. I wasn't working in my business except to continue to serve the clients who I already had. And that was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made in my life, because I'm not if you know me personally, you know that I am not the type of person who can easily sit still and do nothing. But that's truly what I needed. That's truly what my body needed to heal and repair. And I did return to my business last year in 2024, and it was hard. That was another challenge. It was a different type of challenge to return and to learn new ways of working and new ways that are more sustainable for me and my health and my physical needs, and to make adjustments and to do things in a way that I wasn't used to doing. Because in my head, I thought, okay, I'm just going to go back to normal. I'm just going to return and turn the switch back on and keep going, keep moving forward, and everything will be kind of the way that it was. And that didn't work for me. So here it is, the beginning of 2025, and I'm feeling even better than I was last year, which is such a blessing. I do feel like I continue to improve every day. It is still very slow going. I do still experience neuropathy, not nearly as extreme or to the level that I had at my worst. But it's a process of listening to my body and understanding that there are cycles and there are seasons. And I've just been through one of the darkest winters of my entire life. I keep looking down and pausing here because I'm just sitting here talking in front of my computer and the computer goes to sleep. So I probably should have changed the settings so that the computer doesn't go to sleep, because I am also recording video. So if you want to see what I look like when I'm talking and kind of rambling on like this, you can find me on YouTube at Janna Marlise. I don't have a separate channel for More to the Story because I've just always had my own personal YouTube channel, and that's what I'm going to use. Like I said, I'm trying to, with the exception of that fried USB cord, I'm trying to just not let anything keep me from putting this podcast episode out, because I could in my head tell myself, oh no, I got to start a new YouTube channel. Oh no, I got to do this. Oh no, I got to do that. Oh no, I got to do this. And all I do is in that mode, all I'm doing is coming up with excuses, coming up with reasons, coming up with barriers that is keeping me from doing the thing that I say I want to be doing, which how often as writers and authors do we do that to ourselves? Oh, I can't sit down to write today because the kids are home and they need my attention. I have to go make them lunch. I have to do the laundry. Oh no, I can't start building an audience because I don't have a book yet. Oh no, I can't, fill in the blank. I can't fill in the blank because fill in the blank. And you can always have an infinite number of reasons for that second blank, the because blank. You can have an infinite number of reasons. And so here I am working very hard to not let things like, oh, I need a separate YouTube channel, to be the thing that keeps me from releasing this episode into the world. So it's recording. Today is January 31st, Friday, January 31st. My goal is to publish this on Monday, February 3rd. So ideally, you're listening to this and it is February 3rd or later, and I will have met my goal. I'm saying it out loud as a way to hold myself accountable, because if you're listening to this and it's published after the 3rd, I will have proven to you that I didn't keep my goal. I should be able to do it, because as soon as it's recorded, all I have to do is drop it in and push publish. So now here I am rambling. I keep looking down because I have my little list of, my little outline list of what I wanted to get through on the episode today. And by the way, I'll show you a blank page of this paper because I found it recently while I was cleaning out my office. When I was a kid, from the time I was born until I think I was in college, my dad had a printing company. Can you see that? It says memo from Janna with like little telephones across the bottom. And this is one of the things that he used to do, was he would print custom notepads for people, especially around the holidays, and that would be like the gift for friends and family. And then of course I would get some. And so I found just a handful of these old notepads while I was cleaning my office recently, and I was like, I need to start using those again. Okay, little sidetrack. All of that to say, I keep looking down because I have my little outline of notes that I wanted to get through on this first episode. And honestly, I thought this first episode was only going to be like 10 minutes. And here it is, almost 25 minutes. I've been talking for nonstop for 25 minutes. So what's to come? I am aiming to continue publishing an episode on a weekly basis. Majority of the time is going to be me talking, kind of like I was doing today, but with a little bit more focus, a little bit more purpose around a specific theme, a specific topic. I already have one in mind for the next episode, which is going to be about what is the story that you're telling yourself around how you need to write your book or how you need to pursue publishing. And is that story actually the thing that you want? So I'm going to dive into that in the next episode, because I might just stop recording this one and go straight into recording that one. So that's my plan. My plan is to release episodes on a weekly basis where I am giving you a little dose of inspiration that you can hear in my own voice, in my actual speaking voice. I do this weekly already in my emails. If you're not already signed up to my email list, what's the best place for you to sign up for my email list? I don't even know the link for you to sign up to my email list. It'll be in the notes, okay? It'll be in the show notes, and I'll have the link for the next episode. Because what I'm saying is I already do this on a weekly basis in my weekly emails. I usually am talking about something that is, or writing. I'm usually in my weekly emails, I'm usually writing about something that has been going on for me in my life. And there's like a little takeaway. It's usually very small. It's usually something that I can easily connect and relate to the writing, creative, publishing life. And it's really meant to just help inspire and motivate you to take action. Because that's what I do in my work, is I support women in taking action so that they are moving toward their goals, specifically around writing and publishing their books. So that's what this podcast is going to be going forward. Maybe sporadically I will have a guest on. I already have in mind some folks who I might like to invite to be guests. For example, clients that have published books after working with me. For example, other friends who I know that have books published or publishing or coming out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in terms of guests. But I'm not, the previous version of this podcast had a very specific structure where I always had on a guest that was published in Under the Gumtree. They would do a reading of their work, and then we would have a conversation. And one of the things that I'm doing to make staying consistent with a project like this a little more easy for me is releasing some of that structure, some of the need that I have had previously for rigidity and structure, and sticking to this format that actually required a lot of work. So what is easy for me? You can tell that it's pretty easy for me to hit record and start talking. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit record and start talking most weeks. And then maybe every once in a while, sporadically, when the stars align and it makes sense, I'll have a guest. And it'll be a surprise. So who knows? Who knows where the journey of the More to the Story podcast will take us this year? But that's what I have in mind. If you want to stay in touch with me, follow me on Instagram at Janna Marlise. You can follow Under the Gumtree on Instagram at Under Gumtree. It's the beginning of February. I will be in LA for AWP. If any of you watching or listening will be in LA, please come find me and say hello and introduce yourself. I would love to meet you in person. I'm also going to be at Alt Summit in Palm Springs. Alt Summit happens first, then AWP, both happening in March. So if you're watching or listening this and you're going to be at Alt Summit, please find me there and sign up for my email list. I will have the link for you. I can't believe I don't have a link, a good link that I could just say to tell you where to go to sign up for my email list. But subscribe to the podcast on Substack, moretothestorypodcast.substack.com, and you will find the information there for subscribing to my email list as well. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to connect with you and talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.